Welcome to Deep in the Valley, a Missouri Valley basketball podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Bowser, joined by Brian Dutler, and this is your home for everything happening across the Valley. From Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago, we're talking the schools, the rosters, the portal numbers, and the stories that make the Valley one of the most historic and well-respected athletic leagues in all of college sports. So wherever you are across the Valley, you're in the right place. Let's get deep into the Valley. On this week's episode, we are lucky to have a Valley icon and one of the best ambassadors in league history. The coach whose journey spanned from building programs at Bishop Kelly High School to leading two different programs in the Valley to impacting the game today at the highest level of college athletics. He's been a head coach, a program builder, teacher of the game, and along the way, he's given us some of the most memorable quotes in maybe college basketball history, from Missouri State to Southern Illinois, and now into the evolving world of NIL at Oklahoma State. His perspective on the game, past, present, and future, is as real as it gets. Coach Hinson, we are honored to have you with us. Welcome to Deep in the Valley.
I tell you what, boys, I can already tell we're going to get deep in the valley with this podcast. I can already tell where this is heading. And I've never addressed you as Dr. Bowser. Boy, have times changed.
Yeah, definitely. You're the second podcast in a row that said that might be the weirdest part about being on the podcast.
I know Brian will keep you humble, so we don't have to worry about that.
100%. Coach, we're going to dive in. Coach, before everything we know about your career today, you were building something special at Bishop Kelly High School. Can you maybe take us back to those days and maybe what stands out when you think about that program at the inception of your career?
I would say this, my career was unlike a lot of people. I started in the junior high and started coaching summer league basketball. Then I was the head junior high basketball coach. When I graduated from Oklahoma State in 1983, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, and Kentucky did not need a head coach at the time. So I decided to continue my career there at Stillwater Junior High as a social studies professor. I did not go by Dr. Hinson at the time. I was just Coach Hinson. It's probably the biggest establishment that I've made throughout my career, is receiving the title of coach. But I taught civics, I taught history, and I stayed in the junior high ranks for a couple of years. And I went to the high school at Stillwater High School. And then I ended up going to Edmond, where I was the JV coach at Edmond Memorial High School. At that time, it was the second largest school in the state of Oklahoma. And then I got a phone call. Actually, I didn't get a phone call. The head coach at Edmond spoke at a Knights of Columbus banquet. And next thing you know, I'm the son of a Southern Baptist preacher. I'm being recommended for the job at a private Catholic institution in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Needless to say, it was a rather big transition. The closest I'd ever been to Catholicism at that time was seeing the Pope or Notre Dame on football on TV.
That's right.
It was my first mass was eye-opening for an old Southern Baptist. I did a lot of lip syncing. A lot of Milli Vanilli going on at that time because I didn't know their songs. Catholics aren't breaking out into Old Rugged Cross or Just As I Am. Yeah. Thank God they had Hallelujah, and I knew all the words to that. That kind of saved me. But I went to more mass in 6 years than I went to any church, and absolutely loved it. And spent 6 years at Bishop Kelly. It really had a lot to do with the trajectory of where I am today, still to this day, and really proud of those moments.
Yeah, so then you started talking about Bishop Kelly, and you had a great tournament run in 1989. You have an upset in state tournament, still talked about locally and in the area. And you walk us through that moment of what made that team so special to you?
First of all, Brian, we were playing in the first round of the state tournament. At that time, the USA Today, #1 team in the country. And this is a team that had already won the state championship the year before. And I think what made it more monumental than anything is that on the floor at the Mabee Center, it says expect a miracle. And I never forget, I saw Richard Roberts, the president at the time, and they had been coming to our games the year prior to that, he and his father Oral, to watching our games. Unbeknownst to me, they had their eye on me to possibly be the next head coach at ORU. And I was so naive at the time. I had no idea. All I know is these guys were showing up in trench coats and great looking suits, and they're coming to our game. And I thought, hey, they just love college basketball. But I saw Richard Roberts before the game, and I told him we're expecting a miracle. And next thing you know, we win this game, and unbelievable ball game. Crowd's going nuts. Tulsa World Daily, Oklahoma called it the greatest high school upset in the history of Oklahoma high school basketball. And it took off on its own. And of course, President Roberts came into our locker room after the game. And needless to say, I coached another year at Bishop Kelly. We went again to the Final Four. And, then history has it, I became an assistant coach with Bill Self. I interviewed for the head coaching job at the time. Tim Carter from Northwestern, Andy Stodlin from Arkansas, Bill Self from Oklahoma State, and myself from Bishop Kelly University at the time. But we all interviewed for the job. I knew I wasn't ready. It's one of the finer moments of my life. Then I realized maturity had set in. I wasn't ready. I told him I wasn't ready. And Bill went in and talked about me, and I went in and talked about Bill. And Bill gets the job. He hires me. I'm at the press conference. And the day of the press conference, President Roberts announced that he'd hired his next two head coaches. So my trajectory at the Division I level started at that time, and really owe it all to Bishop Kelly and those kids who played for me over the 6 years there.
He had a lot of talented players at Bishop Kelly, including one Brian Dolan, right? Who's one of my favorite people, but he later joined you as an assistant at Missouri State. What, maybe speaking about Coach Dolan specifically, but what's it like to see former players grow into coaches or successful men in business industry or as family men? Maybe what stands out to you as for Coach Dolan specifically, but also other players in your program?
Let's talk about Brian specifically. Let's go ahead and dive into deep into the athleticism of Brian Dolan. His athleticism, he did not inherit a lot of athleticism talent. Let me just put it that way. He could jump and touch the net, but the one thing he could do is he could shoot it. And back in the day, I will say this, Brian Dolan never met a shot that he didn't like and never met a shot that he wouldn't take. And he was absolutely one of the best shooters that I've had an opportunity to take or to have as a coach. And I think to bring it all full circle, Dr. Bowser, is that it means a lot to me that my former players are out there to this day still coaching, whether it be high school, whether it be college. And Brian was one of those certain individuals that he knew the game. He's shown that. He's been a very popular coach in the state of Iowa, and he's a very wanted coach. He had an opportunity this year to come back to Oklahoma. I know there's been several school districts that have tried to hire Brian, and I think when the timing's right, we'll get him back home to Oklahoma. But he's done such a good job now, and he did a great job at the college level as well.
Absolutely.
So you talked a little bit about the transition to Oral Roberts and how how that opportunity came across. But what was that transition like going from a pretty high level high school to now the D1 level?
Well, I don't know if we were a high level high school, Brian. We were a high level high school when it came to academics. We did have several Division I athletes that were really good at basketball that played Division I football and Division I baseball. But we did have a kid named Tim Axley that really played a great role in our success, specifically in that game that ended up playing for Charlie Spoonhauer at Southwest Missouri State. And he was our pride and joy of Division I basketball as an athlete. But I think one of the things, I knew I wasn't ready for Division I, Brian. I didn't know a lot, but I knew I hooked my wagon up to the best guy I could. And at that time, that was Bill Self. He's not a coaching buddy anymore. He's like a brother. There have been a lot of influential people in my life, my teachers, my coaches, my vocational agriculture instructor. I have to throw that out there because I know people in the state of Iowa are watching this, or at least 3 of them are. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to pay tribute to those guys that had such a touching part of my life. And I've only worked for 2 college coaches. One of them's in the Hall of Fame, and the other one just won a national championship as an assistant at Michigan. And I had 2 coaches that I worked under in high school, and they're both in the Hall of Fame. So any level of success that I've had is due all to the people that have had a part in raising me. And certainly my mother and father were the forefront of that, leading that.
So after Oral Roberts, you enter the Valley for the first time at SWMS in the 99-2000 season. What do you remember about stepping into the league at that time?
I remember 2 things that really come to my mind right off the bat. The first thing that came to my mind is Coach Sutton, Eddie Sutton, told me that the Missouri Valley Conference is absolutely, or at that time had been, and it was when I was in there, I promise you, was the best absolute league of coaches in all of NCAA basketball. Coach Sutton talked about they can do more with less than anybody in any conference. So I knew I was getting into a coaches league. And the second thing that I remember is Coach Self told me, Barry, you have to take the job, but it's absolutely the worst time to take this job. I'm following a McDonald's All-American. I am following an Olympic gold medalist. I am following Mr. Basketball from the state of Indiana. I'm following a guy that played for Bobby Knight. I'm following a guy that won a national championship. I'm following a guy that played in the NBA, and I lettered in high school. And they had just gone to the Sweet 16, and they had beat Tennessee, and they had beat, who else did they beat, Dr. Bowser?
Wisconsin,
and it got beat by Duke. And so you talking about, I've never had great timing. My wife will be able to tell you, she'll answer that later on in the podcast, but I've never had great timing. This is certainly one of the events that exclamated that point.
So I want to tell a quick story, because when you first became the coach at SWMS, and I was already at SWMS, I was there for 1 year prior to your arrival. You get to town and you start to make yourself at home. And I think that everybody starts to fall in love with Barry Hinson right away. One of the stories I love to tell folks is our offices were probably 200 feet away from each other. And you popped into my office one day and said, Bows, working on my lawn, working on my landscaping, and I need a pickup truck. I want to trade cars with you. And I was like, okay. And I handed my keys over and you handed me yours. And for everybody to understand, I was driving probably a 1996 GMC Sonoma stick shift. Coach Hinson was rolling in a Cadillac Escalade. So I can tell you that I was the happiest guy in Springfield for about a week while you were doing your lawn and your landscaping.
I'm going to let you know a secret. I was the happiest guy in Springfield because I was back in finally in a truck that I knew what I was doing. And I didn't hate the Escalade. I didn't like driving around the Escalade because, one, it had a license tag that said NCDBLA1 on it back from the days when they became Division I. Charlie had driven with that. Steve Alford had driven with that. Mark Burnson had driven with that. And everybody had that license plate. So the only problem with that is when you got your ass kicked and you're rolling down the road and everybody knows who you are, you can only imagine how many number ones. And I didn't realize they had changed the index finger in the state of Missouri to the number one sign. So they went ahead and used the middle finger instead of this index finger. And I got that a lot. But we had a great first year. Chris, you remember we won more games in the history of any first-year coach at that year. And I don't have a good relationship, I don't think, with the NCAA committee. I don't know how in the world you can win 23 ball games. We got beat in the finals that year and did not go to the NCAA tournament. Little did I know that was the start of something at Missouri State or Southwest Missouri State that would really haunt me and still haunts me to this day.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. There were a lot of teams that people still talk about, even in the Valley, that felt that you had NCAA tournament teams. Your 2006 group, it was 20-8, top 25 RPI, quality wins, and you still got left out. Then you look back at 05 and 06 and 07. How do you process those moments now? And what did that experience teach you about the selection process?
Brian, I'd like to tell you that time heals all wounds. And in most cases, it does. I'm very protective of my players. I'm very protective of my program and the institution which I work for. I spent 9 wonderful years at Springfield. I don't mind telling you right now, when we go back to Springfield, we're going home. That's how we viewed it. We're going back home. And one of the things that came out of that was you're able to explain to young men and young ladies when they meet adversity that you try to put in relationship, that you can try to tell somebody, I've been there, I've done this or whatever. I'm really scorned about the 21 RPI. To this day, 28 is still the lowest RPI never to get in other than our 21. So you just announced we had 21, 28, and a 32, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the 3 of the years that I was there in my 9 years. And you'd like to look back and you say, oh, woe is me or this or that or whatever. But I got fired at Missouri State because we didn't get in the NCAA tournament those 2 years. No ifs, ands, or buts. Dr. John Kaiser was the president at the time. I remember there was 2 or 3 people in the town that had gone to him, and let's just say they had a lot of financial influence. They asked Dr. Kaiser to fire me. And I'll never forget, Dr. Kaiser brought me in, told me about it, and he just said, I run this university, the community doesn't. Stud. And let's don't forget that Dr. John Kaiser is the one that came up with the blue turf at Boise State. And when it first came out, they thought he was an idiot. And he actually went back. He retired at Boise State, had an office there in the library, and he has since passed on forever. Forever. He will be one of the greatest presidents that I ever worked for because he ran the school the way it should be run, and he made the decisions. He had a little Harry Truman in him, since we're going to go back into Missouri. Had a little Harry Truman in him. He should have had the buck stops here on his desk, but he did that. I love that man. And there's three things you never want, Brian, in college basketball. You don't want a new president. You don't want a new athletic director, and you don't want a new facility. And we had two of the three. And Bill Rowe is one of the greatest men that I've ever been associated with. I love him. I can remember standing out of the locker room at Wichita State University. We knew that it was probably the time that this was going to end, knew that I was going to get fired. We were going to have to win the tournament in order to not get fired. And he's out there bawling with me like a baby. And what was the name, Doc? What was the name that was it Kirstie Alley that was in Cheers?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so Kirstie Alley's at the game. You got Coach Rowe and me out the hallway after the beat of Wichita State, and she walks by and we're bawling like babies, and she's thinking, God, they really take this loss hard.
Right?
And I go, if she only knew it, I go, I miss Alley or whatever. I can't remember what I said, maybe tears in my eyes or whatever. But I told Coach right before that, I just said, you stopped being my athletic director a long time ago. You're my friend. And that's all that matters. And I said, let's go win this Missouri Valley tournament, and let's make this easy on both of us. And it just didn't happen. And I worked for a president at that time that had other ideals. And I will say this, I'm going to poke out our peacock feathers here a little bit for my staff and foreign players. They've never achieved what we've achieved since we've left.
Yeah.
So point taken, exclamation point, put that in your pipe and smoke it and all that, whatever you want to do. But they've not gotten close to what those young men did. And it was just a sign of the times. I'm really proud of the guys that followed me. I think the world of Conzo Martin. I think the world of Paul Lust. They're two of the greatest human beings I've ever been around. And I knew a lot of the staff members that were there, and those guys did a good job. It's a hard job. It's a tough job. At that time, it was a really hard job. The Valley's changed tremendously. It's not what it used to be. That's no slight right now, but it's a one-bid league now.
Yep.
If you'll remember right, when we got denied, 4 teams got in.
Yeah,
It should have been a 5-bid league.
0506, Northern Iowa. I want to say Northern Iowa, Bradley, Wichita, and Evansville. Are those the 4?
I thought it might have
I
been
thought
Creighton.
it might have been Creighton.
Creighton.
Oh, Creighton, of course. I'm sorry. I've got a mental block against Creighton.
Royce in that time period took his team. Greg took his team up the deal. But we had great teams. Mark had great teams at Wichita State. Everybody in the Valley was good. Everybody. And it was just, Jim was so good at Bradley when I first got there. So good. It would be 42-41. There were hockey games played in Peoria Civic Arena that had more points than when Jim coached there. It was just really a tough place to play. And we could just go through the list, but I loved it. I loved the Valley, Brian. I loved it.
Yep.
I loved every community that I coached in. I thought the fans were absolutely the best. The True Valley tournament, when you would walk out and there's 23,000 people, the hair would stand up on the back of your neck. And it was just absolutely incredible. And I was fortunate. I got to coach in that league for 16 years.
Obviously, Bows and I go back to the UNI days and getting to hang out quite a bit in the Unidome. And during your time at SMS, we know you got to play some games in a great arena of the Unidome. So I want to have you go back. We know teams absolutely hated coming to Cedar Falls. We could see it during the shoot-arounds. We see it during pregame. Whatever's going on, it wasn't the favorite spot to come. So do you have any recollections of playing your coach in, whether it's pregame, whether it's shoot-around, anything fun that might have occurred in any of your trips to Cedar Falls?
Yeah, I'll just go right straight to it. Never once in 16 years at Cedar Falls did I ever once see a blade of grass. I didn't know they had grass in Cedar Falls. I just thought they had snow. Never once. And the same thing goes for drink. I'd never seen a pond that had a flag in it to let you know whether you could walk on water or not. I used to refer to it as the Holy Land. And then the other thing is when you played in the Unidome, if for some reason during the ball game, someone at the bottom opened the door, the vacuum and the air would literally swipe your ball from left or from the free throw line. I never seen anything like it. It's unbelievable. And then the other thing is, by the time you got from the floor to your locker room, it was time to come back and play at halftime. You got up there and you just, first of all, you're out of breath. You've already walked 3 city blocks to get to your locker room. We're in the PE professor's locker room. We've got nude psychology professors walking around like that have been there have been there for years. And you've never seen old and wrinkly skin like this except on a commercial. And then we tried to come back down to the game and we didn't have to warm up. You have to warm up because you're jogging from the locker room. There's no reason to warm up. You're already sweating coming back from the locker room. And then you throw into it those guys over there wearing all those hats and those purple and yellow overalls. And they're yelling words at me. I'm from a redneck area. I didn't know what these words were. There's an upper redneck level at Cedar Falls.
Yes.
Upper Midwest redneck. You're 100%.
Unbelievable. And then my favorite is I'm in the hotel at the old Holiday Inn where you could smell chlorine outside the hotel before you got in there. You could smell chlorine. I really think that I think part of the reason I had the rant at Murray State was because I sucked up so much chlorine from Cedar Falls. But you would go into this hotel and then on the news station, it would have the weather report. And we were in Cedar Falls one time when the water tower froze. It's 19 below. The water tower froze. That was our recruiting. I couldn't use anything against Northern Iowa because every coach they ever had there was really good. And the people were wonderful. And I'm going to just tell you right now, I enjoyed coming back to Iowa because I'm a Hy-Vee alumnus.
Still.
I love Hy-Vee. I don't know if they're sponsoring your podcast. They might after this one. They may now. But I would drop off the team after shoot around, and I would have the bus driver take me to Hy-Vee. And I would walk around, and I'm going, man, this is a gross story. I like it. I still, to this day, get my chili seasoning from Hy-Vee.
Nice. There are two Hy-Vees in Springfield now, Coach.
Oh, no, I know because one was out by my mom and dad's.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad said, we thought you were going to get here at 5 o'clock. And I just said, oh, we were running late. The truth was I was at Hy-Vee at 4.
That's awesome. So, Coach, between Valley stops, you spent some time in Kansas. Talk a little bit about that stretch, about maybe program building culture, even yourself, maybe that you carried forward into your Southern Illinois opportunity after that.
I've told people this, everybody that I've come across has either found out that I coached at Kansas or knew that I coached at Kansas. They always ask me this question. It's the number one question. What's it like at Allen Fieldhouse? And I've answered it this way ever since I was there. I just said, you can't answer it. You just have to be there. And I would tell you right now, it's a bucket list. If you like sports, it doesn't matter if you like basketball or not. If you like sports, you got to go there. You got to go there one time. And when you leave, you'll tell the next person, I can't explain it. You just have to go. One of my favorite stories is we're playing Albany. This is with Albany State. This was before it was Albany. It's amazing how teams graduate and they lose some, like Memphis State. They got older and they became Memphis. Albany State got older and become Albany. We're playing Albany during the Christmas holidays. And we had an ice storm. It's bad. I'm in the locker room, just like we all are before the game. And it's 2 hours because, I got there early and we're just sitting in there and we'd get in the sauna or whatever. We just hang out. And Danny's in there, Danny Mann. And I looked up and I said, man, it's too bad we got the storm. We won't have anybody here tonight. He goes, what? I said, we won't have anybody. Danny, it's icing right now. It's sleeting out there. He said, you just don't understand, bud. When the students are gone, this is when the locals come because they could get a ticket. They could come see the game now. And they all come. We turned away 1,500 people that night in an ice storm to see Albany State. It's unbelievable. I just never seen anything like it. In 4 years, guys, 4 years sitting on that bench, we lost one home game.
Wow.
And that's the night. It's actually the Saturday was the day after Thomas Robinson's mom died that night. And the team stayed up all night, and we were leading at halftime, and we ended up losing at the end of the game, but only time. And I got a chance to work with another great athletic director, Luke Perkins. I got a Shayan Zinger, which came from Illinois State, from the Valley. Got a chance to work for him. Absolutely loved him. Got to be around great players, but better people, great coaches, great staff. Became our family for 4 years. Didn't want to leave. No, wouldn't have left. That a Valley job came open that I really respected and thought the world of. And I think it was not only just Southern Illinois, but it was the Valley itself, because it gave me a chance to come back home.
And that leads right into your return to the Valley. You take over SIU now. What was kind of a little bit about the difference in the experience between kind of what you thought the Valley was at SMS to now you're taking over SIU? And maybe compare and contrast a little bit on what this new experience was like for you.
I'm going to start it off like this. Mario Mocha may have been the greatest salesman of all time. And Mario Mocha would be a great realtor because he'd be one of those guys that the roof had been blown off, but they super glued it back or gorilla taped it back. And Mario might just forget the full disclosure stuff. And it's a true story, guys. We got there and we found out that the APR was, I don't think we were going to make it. And we were going to get the death penalty. We already had a plan that if we did get the death penalty, we were going to redshirt everybody. And we were just going to play walk-ons and just go 0-30, whatever it was going to be. We met every day, literally every day, to talk about APR. We brought back so many players that had either been kicked off the team or that had dropped out or had been academically eligible. We brought all these guys back to get our APR points. And I'll never forget Doug Elgin and several of our administrators from SIU and myself. We went and visited with the NCAA and visited with the 3 people in charge of APR. And I can remember we needed to get to 900. And we had calculated where we thought we might get to 898.8 or something. And I'll never forget Mario looked at him and said, is there any chance if we got it to 899.8, you guys would round up? And they did not even a hesitation. It was almost like when I proposed to my wife, no. It was immediate. There wasn't even a thought process. No. And I remember I came home that night and I told my wife, I said, we made a mistake. And I said, I think we need to go back to Kansas. I called Coach Self. I talked to him about coming back. And he said he could not believe what I just told him. And then I got up the next day and I went in and I called the NCAA head office guy myself. And I said, this is my job. This is my career. And I can't afford this. And do you think there's any chance that we can make this? And he said, there's always a chance, but this is going to be extremely difficult. And I just told my wife, I said, we've never quit on anything. We're not going to start now. And we decided to stay. And we pulled it off. We got to a 903 of all things. And we got in and we were able to start building the programs. The first 3 years were really difficult. They were really difficult. And then we finally got it going. And our last 4 years, we went 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd. And we had just turned the program. And do you guys remember when I said there's 3 things you don't want to get when you're a coach? Okay, we got 2 more of them. We got a president and an AD, and as much accolades as I've given the other ADs that I've worked for, I will not go down that route with what I ended up with. I got to work. Mario Mocha is one of the greatest ADs that I've ever had a chance to work for, and Jerry Kill was given a really tough situation, and I respect Coach Kill. And then I had great presidents, and I had a great chancellor. When I got there. Had a great president when I got there. And when I left, I had a president that had been replaced, but just wasn't my guy. So it was just really a difficult time. But I will tell you this, we love Carbondale. We loved it. Oh, they're my kind of people. I loved Carbondale. I loved Southern Illinois. Those people were so good to my family and my wife. We suffered heartbreaking tragedy in Carbondale. That community wrapped their arms around my entire family. Matter of fact, the Valley wrapped their arms around us at that time. And go back. If I were to go to Carbondale tomorrow, I'd tell somebody we're going back home. And I absolutely loved Southern Illinois.
Coach, you picked up your 226th Missouri Valley win at Southern Illinois, passing Rich Herron, the former Southern Illinois coach, for fourth place in all-time conference history. When you reflect on that moment, what does it mean to you to be a part of that legacy, not only in the Valley, but in Southern Illinois?
Well, first of all, just to have known Coach Herron and just to have him be a part of practices and games, because when I first got there, Coach Herron wouldn't come to the games. But to be a part of that fraternity, what Bruce did and Matt Painter and Chris Lowry and Rich Herron, what those guys did at that program was absolutely amazing. And I have nothing but respect for those guys. And Chris ran into a buzzsaw there at the end because APR was an issue. Everybody was learning how to navigate the waters at the time. And it was hard for all of us. And it caught up with Chris at the time. But let's don't forget, that sucker took a team to the Sweet 16, and they should have beaten Kansas. They were definitely the best defensive team on the floor. And what Chris Lowry accomplished there defensively was amazing. But to think the reflection part is to be a part of that fraternity, it's just really special. You said something in the promo. I loved promoting the Valley. I took it personal. I didn't mind putting my chest out there. I went after the Power Fives at the time and said, come get you some of this, big boys. And very few of them would. And they would now, but not back when we were there.
Yeah.
They wouldn't play us. I never forget, Dana said, you got to hold on to one game up until September to see if you can get a good. That's how Dana used to trick them. He'd hold off the game until September. Turgeon would do the same thing, and they'd get a good game and maybe a 2-for-1 out of it. And we finally got it when I was at Missouri State, and then Nitzel fired my ass, and I didn't get to open up the new arena, and we played Arkansas. We were going to play Arkansas. And I had a chance there, but and Dr. Nitzel's not getting a Christmas card either. He's not on the list. So I just go ahead and throw that out there.
So you really you walked right into our next segue. We believe that you are one of the best ambassadors of the Missouri Valley Conference. What has the league meant to you over those years?
I think what the league means to me more so than anything is, let's talk about what the communities have meant to me. I never coached in any community in the Missouri Valley that people did not treat me with the utmost respect. I spoke at almost every school we coached at, whether it was the Redbirds Club or the Braves Club, or whether it was at Northern Iowa, it didn't matter. But I would get an opportunity to speak in those communities. And if we're there on a Sunday, I'd go to the local church, wherever it was, on a Sunday. And and everywhere we went in those communities, they just loved you. They loved you. And you knew the radio crew, you knew the TV crews, you knew the administration, you knew the people. We were a family. And I really respected the coaches. I just thought, one of these days, I want to grow up and be like one of these guys. That's how I looked. And every time you go into a Missouri Valley meeting, and there's Dana Altman, or maybe now let's go, there's Jim Lest, or God forbid, Marty Simmons, because Marty's the only coach prior to the game that I would drink Pepto-Bismol prior to playing his teams. No, it was gut-wrenching. He would run so many screens and curls and fades and bumps and this, and I'd just get dizzy over there. And my kids would come over to the bench and say, Coach, I can't guard him. I said, no shit. You're proving that. He scored. And Marty always had the guy that was the leading scorer in the conference. There's a reason.
Yeah, right.
So the other thing, as far as personality-wise, and Dr. Bowser hit on this earlier on in his promo, is that you have given us some pretty good stuff at the press conferences, right? And some all-time moments. We have to go back to that Murray State game where we all learned that your wife, Angie, has a pretty elite shot fake. So what do you remember about that moment and kind of what spurred that on?
Well, let's get one thing straight. She had a better shot fake than that crew. I can promise you that. And I know without a doubt, and I'm sticking with it today, she could at least gotten to the free throw line. and made 1 out of 2. I remember 2.5 minutes into it, I pulled a Scooby-Doo. I'd go, rut-row. And I thought, oh, what the hell? I'm already in. Let's go. And then I went another 5 minutes. So I went about 7.5 minutes. And I'll never forget, this is how it happened. I knew what I was doing because I'd done that. It's what was funny is everybody in the Valley said he's done that in our press conference room after every loss. I don't know why you guys are making such a big deal out of it. But true story, Mario Mocha calls me at 6:30 the next morning. Now you got to remember, we there, came back. I'm always wired up after a game. I know you find that hard to believe. And I went to bed at 2:30. I get a phone call at 6:30 from my athletic director. Mario says on the phone when I answer, last night went viral. I thought he said last night I got a virus. And I said, I hope you're okay. And he said, no, buddy. Last night went viral. I said, what do you mean viral? He said, your press conference is everywhere. Your post-game press conference. I said, what do you mean everywhere? He goes, everywhere. Just turn on the television. He's screaming so loud my wife can hear it. She turns on the TV and I mean, it's on CNN, it's on Fox News, it's on ABC, it's on ESPN, it's running everywhere. And I'm just like, whoa boy. And I called Coach Self. I just said, man, I'm in trouble. And he goes, yeah, you're not in trouble. He said, God, man, this was hilarious. I loved it. And he said, no, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. And the only thing, and I'll stand by it today, I should not have used Marcus Y'all's name, our point guard. And I think Marcus has probably figured out by now, every year at this time, his anniversary, he's really famous. And it may have been one of the greatest gifts that I've ever given that I didn't know I was giving, but I shouldn't have used his name. Yeah. And I apologize for that. I made a mistake for that. But I stood by everything else I said, everything, including the Mama Boys. And what's the greatest thing that ever has happened to me running out of a tunnel, besides the 23,000 at the Missouri Valley tournament, was running out of that tunnel that night, walking out there, and there were 2 little kids wearing shirts that said Mama's Boys. And I'll never forget that until I die.
That's awesome. Thanks. Brian, why don't you transition to NIL?
So now the SIU gig is up, and we kind of move on to look. That's your time at Oklahoma State, and mirrors a lot of the transition within the game of basketball and how things have in college athletics overall, and it has just changed. Now you're leading the NIL collective efforts at Oklahoma State. What's the kind of trait or mindset from your coaching days that has translated most directly to your success in this new role that you have?
First of all, when I came back for 3 years, I was on Coach Boynton's staff, and I didn't do, of course, the NIL wasn't at the time. And you're talking about I told you I worked for 2 really good head coaches. Mike Boynton may be one of the greatest human beings that I've ever been around. Literally, he was 1 block away. Maybe Bowser could get there with his 9-iron. I couldn't. I'd probably take a 7-iron to get to his backyard, but Coach lived right around the corner. And so for 3 years, and then you get to be around a guy like Cade Cunningham that was absolutely remarkable. And everybody talks about what a great player is, what a great human being he is and was while his time was at Oklahoma State. They came to me, they asked me to be the director of NIL. I go back to my proposal to my wife. I told you a while ago, she said, no, that was a lie. It was the same response that I gave to when they asked me to be the director of the NIL. It was hell no, which basically was the same thing my wife said. I think we've gone to the PG status of the program because all the kids are asleep by now. And it's part of the podcast. So I think we can move forward. But they asked me to do it, didn't want to be a part of it. And then I decided at the time I wasn't going to coach again. I knew I wasn't one of the recruiting coaches, and I wasn't going to coach again. And I needed a little bit more stability. I needed to get off the hamster wheel. And this allowed me to do that, to move over to the administration side. And I became an associate AD. And the NIL that I started with, guys, was the true NIL. It was the NIL that was supposed to be. We brought up Hy-Vee a while ago that if you're Caitlin Clark and you saw what she did with State Farm and with anybody in the state of Iowa, but Caitlin Clark made businesses money. There are people that have State Farm insurance because of Caitlin Clark, period. And there are athletes, whether it be at Northern Iowa, Drake, Iowa State, that customers are going to those people because those young men and young ladies influence them to be a part of that space. That's what true NIL was meant to be. We worked with the collective, but I've never been a part of the collective, and I'm not part of the rev share part. I just do the true NIL part, which has been really gratifying for these young ladies and for these young men, that they're able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. I tell people this all the time. I get this. We hate NIL. No, don't hate NIL. You don't hate that if your daughter, granddaughter, grandson, or son was being paid for his name, image, and likeness, $500 to go to a birthday party or speaking engagement or to sign autographs, you wouldn't get upset about that at all. What you're upset about is the transfer portal. What you're upset about is the Wild West with the revenue share. What you're upset about now is that there's no more loyalty towards institutions. That's what you're upset about. But don't keep your eye on the prize. As Dr. King said, not Dr. Bowser, but Dr. Martin Luther King said, keep your eye on the prize and keep your focus there. And that's what it was meant to be. We have lost complete control of athletics. We do need legislation. I know that right now we're in the midst of the House is probably going to pass the SCORE Act. It's going to go to the Senate. They're not going to pass it. They're going to send back an abbreviated version back to the House. I said 1 week after the job, I believe this to my heart, to my core, we are going to collective bargaining. We're headed to collective bargaining. That's where we're going. That's where it's direction. And then we'll have some rules. We'll have some stipulations. And the next thing that's going to happen, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because it's everything that I don't believe in, but we're going to have another division. And the Power Fours will break away. And I promise you that the mid-majors will have a niche. They'll figure it out, but they're not going to be a part of this structure that we're currently in. And people will tell you that's going to run college basketball. It's going to run college. No, it won't, because viewership has been up in all of those and all of those parts of deal. And viewership will happen even at a larger amount now, because I think the mid-majors will create their own niche, and you'll have really good competition with great home crowds, great road trips, all that. But I do think we'll have another shift. The shift most likely will take place starting in 30, 31, 32 with the realignment of the TV packages for the Power Fours. And it's just going to be interesting to see what shakes out. And I do believe this. I do believe that some Power Fours will be left at the train station and won't be on the track.
I think that's true too. That's such great insight, Coach. Brian and I are talking about maybe a little bit of the NIL, but also the rev share part of these things too. We don't want you to give away any trade secrets or anything, but if you were at a Valley school, what are some of the things that they could be focusing on that to be able to build their resources, to be able to be as competitive as possible while we still have exactly the structure that we have, the 64 team tournament and 365 Division I basketball programs? Is there anything that you could see that teams at that or schools at the Valley level that could be doing to maximize their resources over the course of the next six, 7 seasons while we still have everything maybe the way that it is now?
I won't take the liberty to tell you what I would do or what other coaches would do. That's up to them. But Scott Sutton and I have had this comment. Scott was a coach at Oral Roberts University, took over for me, was there 18 years. And Scott's an unbelievable basketball coach, a phenomenal basketball mind, obviously with the family heritage. But Scott and I have talked about this. If I were coaching at the mid-major level today, I would recruit the best local talent that I could find. I would not recruit talent that's just good enough for Division II or Division III. I'm talking about Division I high school kids. They are being overlooked in dramatic fashion. This is what I would tell them and their parents. Give me 2 years. Give me 2 years. And then if you want to go somewhere else, we will high five. I'll hug you. I'll send you on your way. I would also recruit junior college players, and I would recruit as hard as I could. Give me 1 year. Give me 1 year. And in that process of that 2 and 1 year scenario, I would ask every girl on that campus to fall in love with that player to where those young men would not want to leave.
Oh.
Matter of fact, I would do everything I could do to get them to get married.
You're not wrong.
You guys think I'm joking.
Oh.
That part's a little bit, but I really think that's what I would do. And I would just be honest with the parents. We were always we tried to be as honest as we could in recruiting. And I never forget every recruiting official visit, every meeting, in-home visit with the parents, families. I said, your son is going to call you in October, maybe September, could be as very early as September, and tell you that he wants to come home. 99.8% that's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you right now, how you answer that phone call and how you talk to him on that phone call will determine his path and his journey for the rest of his life. I will never verbally or physical abuse your son, but I will get in his ass and try to make him the best I can every single day, on and off the floor. I'm going to tell you something right now. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time. You guys can promo it, you can use it, you can talk about it, you can print it, put it on your wall for all I care. Parents are no longer comfortable making their children uncomfortable. That's a fact. And that ding you just heard is a tornado warning. So
Okay.
boys,
Time to hit the
that's a hint.
basement.
Time to hit the basement.
So let's continue. But if
Yeah.
that siren goes off, I'll
Coach,
still be some, baby.
so I was going to wrap up with a couple of different things. First of all, Brian Dutler and I would love to go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse. It would be a bucket list item for us. If we promise not to wear Northern Iowa gear, do you think Coach Self would let us in?
I will make that happen.
That's
I
what
will-
I promise. I would not wear Northern Iowa
I
gear.
will find a way to make that happen only because you are now Dr. Bowser.
Yeah,
And
I
I
heard that.
I have a
PhD.
good inclination that Brian may have been one of those guys wearing those overalls. So yeah, I probably owe it to him as well.
Good, Ben.
So Coach Hinson, we can't thank you enough for joining us. This has been an amazing thing for us. We're having a lot of fun. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think this is the final thought. I want everybody to understand this. I went through open heart surgery in October. And prior to my surgery, I found out I was going to have it on September 29th. And I had 14 days prior to my surgery. I had quintuple bypass. I had 90, 90, 88, 85, 75% blockage on my 5 arteries. The guy looked at my wife and said, it's a miracle this guy's alive. And in that 14 days, you have a lot to think about. And let me tell you, when they put you on the gurney and they look at you and they say, would you like a priest to go in the room with you before your surgery? It's legit. And the one thing that I discovered in those 14 days is that I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of what I was going to miss. My children, the woman that said no and hell no to my first proposals, my wife, my grandchildren, even my 2 son-in-laws, even though they're both dipshits, but my son-in-laws, I was going to miss really my friends. And so I took those 14 days and I wrote them letters. I wrote them all letters. I didn't tell anybody. I just put them in the safe. And there was a file that basically in there says upon death. And the reason I bring that up here at the end and to be so poignant is that if you're listening to this podcast and you finally got to this part, don't have any what ifs. And do you know your parents really well? Do you know your friends really well that when they do leave this earth, that you can honestly tell yourself, I knew them. And that you can literally look at your friends or your family members and say, good ride, cowboy. Good ride.
Amen.
Don't miss that opportunity. Don't miss that opportunity. And I've been blessed. I got an oil change and I'm going to be 65 next month. And I'm hoping to be around a lot longer and hopefully do some more Missouri Valley, Deep in the Valley podcast.
Well, you are always welcome on this podcast, Coach.
Yep.
Matt. And I would tell you that Brian and I actually had an offline conversation the other day about what this podcast has done for us. Just in the short amount of time that we've been doing it, we've been able to reconnect with people all across the Valley that we haven't talked to for years, or maybe we see them once a year at the Valley tournament, right? Just very poignant words, Coach. I can't thank you enough for joining us. And we would be honored if you would come back any other time. We'd love to have you.
Maybe the next time we can just talk barbecue.
Yeah,
That's what we can do. We can talk barbecue.
Okay, so that does bring me. So there's always a question I'd love to ask, Coach. If I come to Stillwater, if Brian and I come to Stillwater, and you get us tickets to a game, where would you want us to go pregame? At a restaurant, bar? Where would you want us to go? And what would be your go-to order?
Okay, first of all, the worst barbecue I ever had was sensational. We can do that. When you come to Stillwater, you have to go to Eskimo Joe's and order the peppered bacon cheese fries with jalapenos.
I'm sold already.
Yeah, and there may be a reason that I had to have open heart surgery.
Maybe. One final question I had too. We're going to start this with everybody that we talked to in the Valley that coached or played. Who was the most challenging player in your Valley history that you had to prepare for?
Not even close. Not even close. Ja Moran. I've never seen anything like it. Ever. I've never seen anything like it. And we had an official that, God, what was Joe officiated the NBA, and Ja Moran did a shot fake. Aaron Cook was guarding. Aaron Cook jumped up in the air. Let's remember now, Aaron Cook was my point guard at Southern Illinois, transferred to Gonzaga, played 19 minutes in the national championship game. He could guard. Ja gives him a head fake. He jumps up to get popcorn in the third section. Ja is leaving, takes off outside the lane and puts his crotch on the guy that rotated over my big man's forehead and dunked it. And Joe runs by my bench and he goes, "You got no shot tonight, big boy." I think Joe, I don't know. People, Valley nerds will look it up what he had, but I swear he had 30, 10, and 10 that night. But absolutely. And guys, the best shooter, I'd go back to Jacobson at Northern Iowa, Kyle Korver. I'd go back to Fran Van Fleet at Wichita State. Any of those guys at Southern Illinois that guarded you, I used to call them Doberman pinchers. They were just great players. Valentine at Evansville. I know I'm leaving people out, but just really good players. And that's why I love the Valley. I just loved it to a T.
That's awesome. So that's another episode of Deep in the Valley. We appreciate you guys spending a part of your week with us and talking Missouri Valley Conference basketball. A special thanks to Coach Hinson. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and follow along as we cover everything happening across the Valley all year long. And as we end here from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago, we will be here every week with those stories about the Missouri Valley Conference. For Brian Dutler, I'm Chris Bowser. We will see you next time, Deep in the Valley.